Here's a brain teaser for you. Could a strength, an acquired strength that you put a lot of effort into developing and refining, could that strength also be a weakness in the cockpit? I think you might be surprised. This episode is brought to you by Rexair Professional Pilot Academy of Sebring, Florida. Florida has been the go-to flight training destination for nearly a century. Rexair is a soup-to-nuts outfit that's got housing, classroom space. They fly RV-12 aircraft that are brand new factory built. They've got everything a flight student needs to be successful. Rexair is a bit different than most academies in that it's intentionally small. So there's more one-on-one CFI to student activity, and since the students all live together, the students all support each other. The goal of Rexair and their technologically advanced aircraft is to do the best they can do to help you get where you want to be for your professional flying life. So give them a call, 309-397-6191, or drop them a line, info@rexair.net. Rexair Professional Pilot Academy, Sebring, Florida. It doesn't really matter what type of airplane you're in, if it's a home built, if it's a factory built, if it's a classic, if it's brand new, modern off the line. There's a lot of information available to us in the panel, as there should be. You know, when we fire up the engine after going through the checklist and get everything set, we should be looking at that oil pressure gauge right away, because if that oil pressure doesn't come up, that indicates a problem, and we're going to want to shut down rather than damage the engine. And for every phase of flight, there's a reason we need information off that panel. But could your ability and your desire to absorb that information become a problem? Let me give you an example of where that could be true, but how you could fix it and why it's important that you do. Dave was an excellent flight student. I really enjoyed flying with him. He was top notch. Dave studied well. He took his lessons seriously. He put real effort into the precision of flying and understand why he was doing what he was doing and what the outcomes were supposed to be. He was a terrific guy. But Dave had a huge advantage that was also a disadvantage. You see, he was an engineer, which means Dave was pretty bright. He was really good at seeking out information and analyzing the data that he got off that little six-pack in the Cessna 150 we were flying all those years ago. But of course, all that information, as valuable as it is, it's not all the information. There is more important information, yes, more important information to be found outside the window, on the other side of the windshield. The panel is not everything we need to know. It's a lot of what we need to know, but we need to take a more holistic approach when we're in flight. If you haven't clicked the subscribe button yet, may I encourage you to do that very thing. Maybe even click like on this video and leave a comment. What's your story about when you did or didn't look out the window when you should have? In this example I'm thinking of, which really did happen, the scenario looks like this. Dave and I are flying out of Meriden Markham Airport in central Connecticut. One runway, 1836, non-towered Gulf airspace, terrific place. I absolutely loved my time there. It really was a great experience. Well, one day Dave and I are flying off runway 36, and it's hot. So a 150 with its 100 horsepower Continental engine is not going to leap off the pavement, but he's doing a really good job. And we do everything we're supposed to do. We do our run up, we taxi out, we check the area, we make the radio calls, all that, and we depart runway 36 at Meriden Markham Airport. As we depart the runway, lifting up into the air because it's hot, and I'm a big fella, and the airplane is fully fueled, we're getting about 250 feet a minute as we climb out at VY, 67 knots. Now, Dave, being an engineer and very into data and very good at analyzing data, is drilled in on the panel. He's looking at his airspeed. He's looking at his climb rate. He's watching his heading on the DG. He's really drilled in, and he's doing a great job of keeping us wings level, climbing at VY. I have no complaint with that. However, the panel is not the be-all and end-all of a flight. As we're flying north off runway 36, I notice Dave is entirely into the panel. as engineers sometimes will be, or brand new students who think all these gauges and instruments and switches and lights must be here for a reason, especially now with the glass panels. I got to be head down and look at that. So I mentioned to Dave as we're climbing out, everything looking good, Dave? And he says, absolutely. I'm right at VY 67 knots. I'm holding my heading. Everything's looking great. Nothing bothers you at all. You're pretty solid on this. Yep, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And I point out the window, which Dave is not looking out, and say, does this mountain give you pause at all? Because just north of Meriden Markham Airport, in a straight line with runway 36, is a mountain with a tower on top of it that goes up to 1,223 feet, as you can see right here on the sectional chart. Now, you can do a little bit of math in your head as you look at this sectional and figure out if you're climbing at 250 feet a minute and you're traveling at 67 knots in the direction of a large granite obstruction, are you going to clear that mountain? I don't think you are. So the lesson of this was the panel is really important. There's a lot of great information there. And Dave was doing a terrific job of picking out the correct information and looking at it. But the flock of birds you're about to fly into, or the mountain, or the power lines, or a number of things that could cause real damage to you and your aircraft and end your flight in a way you don't want it to end, that's all on the other side of the window. This is maybe one of the most challenging things flight instructors have to impart to students early on. And when we go on flight reviews with pilots, especially pilots who own their own aircraft and have great pride in the upgrades they've made to their panel, that window in front of you is the most valuable instrument you've got, especially if you're flying specifically VFR. Admittedly, if you're on an instrument flight plan, that's a useful thing. Those windows, when you've got visibility, use it. Seeing a void is a real thing. Do it. But if you're flying VFR, these panel instruments should be a very quick reference. You might think of it as when you're driving down the highway, 70 miles an hour. I assume I live in Florida, so it's 70 miles an hour here. If I'm driving down the highway, I don't stare at the speedometer the entire time I'm rolling down the road because I am guaranteed to run into other traffic or a guardrail or a bridge abutment because I'm not looking where I'm going. In reality, I look way down the road. I look around the periphery. I look back and forth from the hood of my car to way out in the distance. And occasionally, I glance down at the speedometer to see where I am. Am I in the ballpark? Maybe I could slow down a little bit. Maybe I have enough room that I could speed up a little bit. I don't stare at the panel. Now, in the airplane, this can be a challenge because I've got a student who's looking at the airspeed and they're looking at the DG and is the directional gyro matched up with the compass? And am I on my altitude? And what's the vertical speed indicator telling me? And oh, there's the oil temperature and the oil pressure. And let me set the tack. There's an awful lot going on, but you can separate that out into lots of small little references and then back out the window because everything that can hurt you can be seen outside the window. The panel will not show any of that. Division of attention is a big deal. One of the big problems we'll find when students get under the hood for the first time is they fixate. And if you're a pilot, you've experienced it. I sure have. And you start looking just at the altimeter or just at the airspeed indicator or just at the attitude indicator. Whatever it is, you pick something and you're so concerned about that one piece of the puzzle, you focus on it to the exclusion of everything else. Learning to have a good scan is a tough challenge. You can do it. With practice, you really can. But if you're flying VFR, you want to be looking out that window, doing collision avoidance, doing navigation tasks most of the time, not occasionally. So while Dave was a great student and he did pass his check ride on the first try, he really was good. He had developed a strength as an engineer to gather data, to analyze it, to make decisions based on it, and control the aircraft using that information. And he did great at that. But he did it to the exclusion of collision avoidance and navigation by just looking out the window. Remember, VFR is visual flight rules, not panel flight rules. Look out the window. If you're lucky enough to have one, make use of it. Look, I know this is a kind of an odd topic, and I know it's not something that many people will take seriously, but trust me, one of the great challenges we have as VFR pilots is see and avoid, especially as we converge in the old days on a VOR, today on an airport, a non-towered airport especially, where aircraft are converging from all different directions, possibly at different altitudes. And if we're looking at our panel instead of out the window, yeah, you may have ADS-B in, but not every airplane has ADS-B out. Remember, if you're flying in Gulf and Echo airspace, you aren't required to have ADS-B out. And there are aircraft like Cubs and Champs and T-Crafts and a variety of others that never had electrical systems in the first place. They're grandfathered in. So don't rely on the panel. And don't rely on the gizmos you've got in the panel to protect you from all things at all times, because it won't. The window, on the other hand, that's all powerful, because if you can set pitch and power and everything else goes, you can still fly that airplane safely and bring it in for a good landing. So don't be Dave, even though I really like Dave and he was terrific. Be you. Be a pilot who takes that data on the panel very quickly and gets their eyes outside again. Keep that scan going, near and far, left and right, up and down, all the time, because there are things out there that can be challenging, and you really don't want to run into them at cruise speed. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. I hope you got something out of this that you find useful. It really is something that resonated in my life, and I am a huge believer. Look out the window. It's there for a reason. I'll see you next time, right back here at MadPropsAero.